Tom, yesterday we wanted to get around to this but didn't because yesterday was what it was. Today things are a little bit better, a little bit more, we hope, back to normal. But Natasha kind of walked in yesterday afternoon and said, did you see this? Our Governor General got herself a pretty hefty $40,000 raise. And I think a lot of people kind of looked at this and went, wait a sec. Here we are living through the times you are right now. The optics in this do not look good. So what do we do here?
This is outrageous. And $40,000 is the salary of lots of people who work full time. And for her, basically in a totally ceremonial position, getting that type of money, and that's after what we learned what it cost for one of her trips to the Middle East, where she visited a couple of countries, and just the bill for the food was over $100,000 on the aircraft. It's completely nuts. It's out of control. It shouldn't exist. The grounds, by the way, we always talk about whether 24 Sussex should be redone. I don't think you have to redo 24 Sussex. You give the Prime Minister the residence at Rideau Hall, and you find a nice condo for the volunteer member of the community who will take it for a couple of years at a time and not go through all these types of expenses. Look, the salary is already outrageously high, and on top of it, there's a pension for life. There's hundreds of thousands a year in expenses for life. There's all sorts of emoluments and things like that come with the job, and it is purely ceremonial. It's a shame that it still exists. It is a relic from our British colonial past, but I think it's high time we have an adult conversation in Canada about whether or not, well, like the Australians, they just said that King Charles III is not going to be on their banknotes, on their money. And I think we should start there, and we should start talking about the Governor General the same way Quebec did it a few years back. Essentially, now the Lieutenant Governor in Quebec is a senior civil servant, and that's more than enough. You don't need this is just signing bills, on behalf of a sovereign monarch of Canada who lives in another country. It doesn't even make any sense logically in this day and age, but we're stuck with it. So let's at least make sure we stop throwing so much money out the window.
I've defended her. I mean, I like Mary Simon myself. Like, I just like her as a person. And in this role, I think she's a great pick. And I've defended her being in that position, and even the role, especially the fact that she's the first Indigenous woman to have that position.
Sure.
But when I see $342,000, Tom, my brain can't compute it. And then this $150,000 a year pension, no matter how long you've served, I cannot. There's no justification for that.
None. And again, I mean, if you were to ask for volunteers, there are all sorts of people who have done great service to their country, who would love to be in that role, but wouldn't take a salary. And these things should come, yes, with certainly the staff necessary to help you do the job. You shouldn't be out of pocket, but nobody should be making $342,000 a year for a ceremonial function like that.
Agreed.
Yeah, hard to argue against that. I just wondered if this was built in, Tom. Like, it's not a matter of she filed and said, I need more money, right? They're automatically just every year indexed to something?
Well, there is a statute that says that they can, it's within a range of increases. But at some point, none of that exists on its own. It's all stuff that has to be put into place and accepted and approved. And that's the discussion we're able to have now.
All right, let's go on and talk about something else. Look, I know yesterday we started by talking about the situation in St. Rose Laval. We know now that, first of all, and I think James Manny made a really good point before. So, yes, Premier Legault was going to go. All the opposition leaders showed up there today. We found out, of course, that the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, will be at the vigil tonight.
Right.
It's one of those things where I think we can, as citizens, look at this and go, you know what? Good call, right call. It needed to happen. It's good to see it happen.
Absolutely. And of course, there'll be some to say, well, what's Trudeau coming into St. Rose for? I think Trudeau, as the Prime Minister of Canada, is showing a lot of class by deciding that he's going to go there and show sympathy and empathy. Of course, first and foremost, for the families, and our hearts go out to them so much. Such incredible sorrow they must be going through right now. But the whole community, people are really in shock. And so good on Prime Minister Trudeau. And of course, Premier Legault was pitch perfect in French and in English today. He just did an outstanding job.
Would it have been perhaps more prudent to not have announced that the Prime Minister was going to be there tonight? Because now it becomes a bit of a spectacle. It becomes a much bigger, I mean, already obviously the security would have to be there, but Aaron brought up the possibility of protesters showing up. Does it make it about something else by announcing ahead of time that he's going to be there?
I've been around for a long time, but if any protester shows up when Prime Minister Trudeau is there tonight trying to console grieving families who just lost children, whatever cause that would be, I think that it would be rapidly become a lost cause. was. So maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm not thinking far enough ahead. But I don't think there's going to be anybody.
Well, let's hope so. Yeah. And someone posted the other day on Twitter again. Do we have to have protests every time he shows up anywhere? And let's hope that cooler heads prevail tonight and realize this is not the time for anyone to be there unless they're paying their respects to the families involved in this. So
that's
let's
all
leave
they
it at
should
that.
be doing.
That's a beautiful church, by the way. I know that my provincial riding was up in Chamonix, and I know that church was absolutely gorgeous.
Okay.
So it's going to be a very solemn atmosphere, a very nice atmosphere for the families, comforting. But again, the tragedy that they've been through, it's just, that those families are just in tears. Since it's happened, and there's no way to explain any of this. You get all sorts of analysis and everything, but it's just literally mindless.
Okay.
We spoke to a man earlier whose daughter was at the daycare when it happened, and it took hours, Tom, for him to be able to find out that she was okay. And honestly, like he was, the way he spoke, he was matter of fact and emotional about it, but he still sounded a little bit in shock.
Well, I think that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
If you're anywhere close to something like this, and it is so inexplicable, and the bereavement, the sense of loss, the grief is going to be so deep. I think that people will be going around a little bit shell-shocked for a while, because it's not something you can begin to explain.
Exactly.
Tom, I want to go on, and I didn't want to bring this up, but I was reading some of the back and forth today. Saw Pierre Poilievre's post taking on the CBC, as he's done in the past, by the way. Him attacking the CBC, cutting for their funding, or suggesting their funding rather be cut, is nothing new. But this idea where he's come out to get the president of the CBC now for attacking him, and in fact there was no attack. It was basically her just out of the box saying, hey, this is what's going on. We realize it's happening. Can we just move on? Kind of low blow here, isn't it, Tom? No?
I think that for having been in a party other than the Liberal Party of Canada and having dealt with the CBC, I can tell you that there is definitely a Liberal bias at the CBC, full stop. Anybody who's been in any other party lives it. And I guess, Poilievre's got a bit more of a yap to him, and he doesn't mind talking to his base about this. But, look, when they had the announcement on healthcare on Tuesday, it took about 4.5 seconds for every news outlet and newspaper in the country to go through the numbers and say, okay, the federal government's saying $196 billion, but let's look at what's actually here. Looks like the new money is $46.2 billion over 10 years. What did I hear when I flipped? I hear CBC saying $196 billion. So they're the only ones that I heard in all of the media that I scan and cover. They're the only ones that I heard who repeated the government's message. That's dealing with the CBC. I'm sorry. I mean, I work in the media, and I have to always be careful what I say. But I think that it's not fair to Poilievre to say that he's just ranting out of turn. I've lived it up close and personal with the CBC.
I would simply say that when that story came out about the provincial health, the money's being sort of handed out to the province, that original release that came out quoted a $200 billion figure. You would have had to read a little longer to see to the part that how much was only new money. So we blame them for that?
Well, but look at the resources that they have at the CBC. And for them to just, and by the way, this was the 6 o'clock news that I heard this on, so it had already been hours to go through this. And as I say, I did not hear a single news outlet in Canada other than the CBC rotely repeat the government's line about the $196 billion. So it's a small snapshot of what you go through. I mean, there's this, it's like dealing with the Tower of Pisa. It always leans one way. And the CBC leans heavily towards the Liberals, and should every single advisor that he has is probably pulling out their hair saying, don't pick a fight with somebody who buys ink by the barrel, which is old advice in politics about not taking on newspapers. But the frustration that Poilievre must feel, I absolutely sympathize.
Wow. Okay. I don't really know what to say to that other than, do you think this is really something you want to keep beating your chest about? Well, not you. I mean, Pierre Poilievre.
No, I understand how you're saying it because you never heard me complain about the CBC when I was in politics, because I had all of my advisors saying, I know the frustration you feel, but you just can't say anything against the CBC because Canadians will take the side of the CBC and they'll say that you don't love the CBC enough, But it's not that I don't love the CBC enough. It's just that I get very frustrated when I see what I consider to be, because I lived it firsthand, a strong bias towards the Liberals.
Fair enough. Okay.
Do you want to quickly touch on this, that we may be able to fast track Turkish and Syrian survivors from the earthquake zone?
Well, good on us if we're able to do that. The words fast track and Canadian immigration don't exactly go together.
Well said.
So this sounds more like something to have something to say about a tragedy that's taking place on the other side of the world. But if we can pull it off, if we can actually help, fine. I mean, we saw that at the beginning of the war in Ukraine, that there were other countries that were so fast to help, and we were so slow off the mark. So, again, if we can do it, fantastic.
Yes, let's
Agreed.
hope. Let's hope.
Tom Mulcair back tomorrow morning with Andrew Carter at 7:40. Thank you, Tom.
Jay, good care.
Have a good one.